Hey guys, it's Landon. Welcome back to the Come Up Top Pod. I'm here with Joe. I'm here with Brennan. We got a lot of cool things to talk about today, some basketball, some volleyball. We have a special guest hopefully coming on today, Clifton Grooms from the Cliff Notes podcast. He texted us about 20 minutes ago telling us the Wi-Fi towers went down, 2 of them in St. Joe where he's at. So right now it's just a maybe, but even if we don't have him on today, we got a lot of good stuff in store for you guys.
Yeah, so there's a lot to break down. First, the stuff that we're going to go through, some of it Metro, all of this, etc. But Cliff Notes, if you don't know who he is, really good guy. He covers Northwest Missouri, Maryville, Buchanan schools, Plattsburgh, Lafayette.
Really anything north of what we used to cover. I used to go to him a lot if I needed to know, who was playing well in northern Missouri. There's a lot of this job, like the more you think about it, is like some of the other regional groups like Lawrence Journal World or there's a lot of great people up at KQ2 and St. Joe, and it's like you kind of have to lean on those guys to see what's going on in specific areas. Yeah,
because we were okay with we covered Plattsburgh. We went up a little north than we usually do, but they were really good last year. But there's even further schools like up even north or even a little bit.
Maryville's really good at football. They were last year, and it's a battle. And I'm glad that we were able to, for the most part, like build a good relationship with him. Obviously, he's coming on the pod.
Hopefully, yeah.
Really good dude.
Should be good. Should be good.
We're actually gonna kick it over quickly to our St. Joe expert in the booth, Mr. Tyler Taylor. Tyler, how does that all work up in St. Joe? The towers. Do you know where they're at? Can you give us an address or?
They're actually South End, like near where he's at, like South Belt.
I knew he was going to have an answer to that question. And that is I've lived in Kansas City for my entire life. I could not tell you
where
a single tower is.
But
you guys don't know about that one tower up there, right there on this specific place. It fell down approximately 27 seconds.
No, but again, all jokes. We hope that everything is up there.
Yeah,
going
Tyler
good.
gets
He'll be on later.
notifications every time a tower goes down.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about a lot of stuff with him. 8-on-8 football, a bunch of stuff. But for now, Brennan, you go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to kick it over to begin tonight. Shawnee Mission Northwest. They won the camo shootout. They went 9-0. Over the weekend against a lot of good Kansas schools. It wasn't a weak competition. They weren't playing 3A schools. But they're going to return a 6'10 sophomore in Ethan Walker. And from what I've seen out of him, he looks a lot more polished. That was one thing that we kind of had to worry about at his game is he was 6'10 and it looked a little clunky. But David Birch and that staff up there, they've done a really good job so far at turning him into a good basketball player. And Birch, at least in my mind, is one of the Fritz disciples, which means that he probably is really good at turning big men into really good players. So that's a guy we're definitely going to look out for. Maybe not quite yet player of the year at 6'10 and being a sophomore, but a guy that we're definitely looking for defensive player.
Oh, for sure. I remember going to the Class 6 championship last year, and you had 4 Kansas City schools: Olathe North, Shawnee Mission Northwest, Blue Valley Northwest, Blue Valley North. Yeah. Blue Valley North was really good, but they lost a lot of seniors, so we don't really know quite where they're going to sit yet because they have a lot of, there's going to have a lot of new players. Blue Valley Northwest was everyone was like, they're going to win state, them or Wichita Heights, and then, of course, it was Wichita Heights. It was a rematch of the year before. Blue Valley Northwest won. But Shawnee Mission Northwest, they had their team was so young. Yeah. Their team was so young. Olathe North was really impressive to watch because they were so fast, but they also, if you put Ethan Walker on that team, they could have won the whole thing because they had 4 guys that were under 6 foot. Not that they were great players. They just had very limited height. They were like, absolutely. You know how the Warriors run small ball? Yeah. They were so small. But they were great on defense. They could get buckets. They made it to state.
And you look at Jalen Watson on that team, dude. He's dunking at 5'8".
Yeah, no, it is insane.
I'm gonna give him 5'10" because I don't think he's actually that short. But
no shoes on, he might be
5'10" in high school basketball.
At the All-Star game, he's definitely not 5'8".
Yeah,
but
he's not like you put him. He was on the same court as Cam Manial last year at the All-Star game, and you're like, these guys, they played the same game. Yeah. They're doing the same thing right now.
Cameron Manial is also insanely just tall and huge, and he looks
put him next to John Bull and he looks like he's 6'4".
Yeah, but still this team, Shawnee Mission Northwest, they played excellent last year. I know they lost to Blue Valley Northwest, but a lot of people did.
it feels good to at least lose to the eventual champion.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially as a team so young too.
Right.
But yeah, like he was what 6'9", 6'10" last year as
Yeah.
a freshman, and you could see sometimes
He came
where,
off
like,
the bench.
Yeah, and
which
you
is
could see
crazy.
sometimes where like, oh, he's a little. I mean, he doesn't have everything quite there, but he was a freshman.
Yeah.
Like as a sophomore, junior, senior, this kid has. I mean, there is no ceiling
Mega upside.
in my
yeah,
mind.
Mega upside.
And that's
Yeah.
what the type of coaching staff Shawnee Mission Northwest has. I feel like he's blessed to be where he's at because they're the type of people that turn athletic players into well-rounded basketball players.
Right. And I mean, the more you think about it, really, like most of the big Kansas schools, those perennial contenders, just have really good coaches.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and you look at a lot of the guys over there now, David Birch at Shawnee Mission Northwest, Aaron Ime at Blue Valley Northwest. Those are guys who are going to coach in Kansas for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of, like the Kansas coaching carousel is not a very big carousel most years.
But again, Shawnee Mission Northwest, props to them winning the KMO. But also, I think they maybe lost one kid from last year, Malik Oatis. I mean, he was
Malik Oatis
probably their best. I mean,
We're gonna-
it wasn't close, but
Yeah, we're going to get into, especially later in the episode when we go down to Cardinal Ritter and we talk about some schools like that on the football side.
yeah.
You're going to see that like a lot of these teams are losing their best player, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, well, this kid had 380 yards last
Yeah.
year. He's going to fill that role to an extent at least.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some teams where like we'll look it up, like Troy or DeSoto, stuff like that, and you're like, they had 4 running backs,
Yeah.
and it's like
They had 4
and
guys.
all like that one year, Park Hill South, 2 years ago, we didn't have our website yet, but we still covered a lot of it. They had like 4 running backs go down with injury, and their 5th string still had 800 yards at the end of the year. I'm like,
It's nuts.
Yeah.
And it shows you how much talent there is that it's like there's a guy. It also shows you kind of why like transfers might be a little bit more prominent now because there are guys who are in that 4th-string spot. And it's not because they're not good. It's because the team around them is so good, which is why like Ben Miller, who was a starter for Pembroke Hill this year, he started his career at Staley. He started his high school career at Staley. And then you come into that program and you think, this Kyan Evans kid is going to be
really
pretty good.
Like there's like Zaire Ragsdale. He's going to be a name that most of you guys are familiar with if you pay any attention to basketball. Him and Avion Webb were right there with Northtown. They both went there their freshman year. They're both great. And Zaire now plays for Park Hill South. And he's really good. And everyone knew he was good, but he was coming off the bench because Avion Webb was ahead of him or whoever
Alex
it was.
Gunnels
Or
was
Alex
ahead of him,
Gunnels
yeah.
or Kyan or whatever it was. Right. But now he went to Park Hill South and he had a great year right next to Kamai and it's like
he really filled into what was the kid they had 2 years ago?
Dockery.
Dockery.
Dockery?
Dockery.
Yeah.
Yeah, he filled into what Messiah
Talk about
did.
someone who can dunk at what was Dockery maybe 5'10".
Dude, I remember
windmilling
playing
in games.
I remember playing against Messiah Dockery, and you're like, oh, this kid's gonna lay it up on the fast break. What just happened?
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the bench.
Went to the 8-10 shootout or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I saw a Benedictine highlight because Dallas sent me it I think and I was watching it and it was like a scrimmage or something like that
Yeah.
and he got a steal fast break windmill in the scrimmage. I'm
Yeah,
like
he was
what?
dunking in warm up. I called Park Benedictine this year.
And he wore flat bottom Converse.
Oh yeah, he was old school.
Yeah, dude.
Does that not hurt your feet? Like you could get it. Like he has 0 extra inches on those shoes.
Yeah,
he
for
could
real.
wear LeBrons or Giannis's or something, get an extra inch or 2. Nope, he's just.
It looked like, dude. I thought the first time I watched him play, I thought he was out there hooping in like Converse All Stars at first. I'm like, what are we doing?
But he was.
Get that man. Did you leave your shoes at the school, bro? What are we doing?
The guys that walk in with the Yeezy foams or something.
Right, bro. I was like, what in the YMCA are we doing right now? But he's got like 20 at half. Quick segue. We're going to talk, kind of get into the football side, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Really a football-oriented episode. I'm going to flip these on our little prompter up here. Is this Lee Summit North's year?
I mean, okay, so
I think about this pretty much daily.
yeah, we were talking about how last episode we made a podcast with our school called the BK and Joe Show at Northtown. And Brennan was like, first of all, the start of the year, if people didn't know, Ray-Peg just won state, and we were like, Ray-Peg's going to be good, and they weren't very good. They were okay. They were like 8-5, I think, after they lost there or whatever. Yeah, but 8-5 is still a good year.
8-5 after you go 14-0 is not.
Yeah. But
Dombrowski was good. That was before Jaden Riddell had his coming out party, which Jaden Riddell, I mean, there are 2 guys right now in my brain that tight ends specifically that went from guys who were like, I have no idea who this kid is, or really 3 now that I think about it, that turned into five-star caliber prospects overnight. Jaden Riddell at Ray-Pec.
Yes.
2 years ago, Mudia Rubin at Park Hill South.
Yeah,
Mudia, nobody knew who he was, and then all
now
of a
he's
sudden,
going crazy.
Oh,
at
Stanford.
Stanford. Now he's going crazy at Stanford. And then the last guy, oh my goodness, who is it? Gavin Hoffman at Blue Valley Northwest. He just
You could
committed to
even
Iowa.
say, I mean, not that Bjorn wasn't a big name because he was like the biggest guy on the football field, but even he, like at Mizzou, is, I mean,
Or Iowa State. He's at
Iowa State, yeah.
No, and I remember watching him play, and he was the scout that you had to look for.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he wasn't because Mudia was balling on a different level.
Yeah.
I mean, God, I remember when they beat Northtown 7-0.
Dude, that game was so boring. It was great, but it was like
I got to call like 11 sacks that game. I had a great
yes, it was a great defensive bout because one, Northtown didn't really have an offense, and Northtown had a really good defense.
Let's give credit where credit's due. I mean, James Williams was on a tear that year too. He's at he just committed to Nebraska after a year playing community college ball.
You talk about Matt Rule coming down to Kansas City hard.
Yeah.
I've been watching like Jay Sean,
Keelan Smith.
Keelan Smith. I'm seeing all these Kansas City top players, top 5 going into the recruiting, and I see Nebraska in all of them. I'm just like, what am I missing? And then I forgot that Matt Rule went there, and I was like,
that is one thing as well. Like after Ronnie got to Michigan now has like 4 guys they're scouting here. I'm like, Michigan never had a kid from Kansas City, really. Like never. And Ronnie was gonna go to Missouri State for basketball.
Yeah.
And Coach Harbaugh was like, let's give this kid a chance, and he proved it. He's in San Francisco now.
Yeah.
But Lee Summit North, let's go back to that.
Yeah.
Lee Summit North, 2 years ago when we were on this podcast, I was like, everyone was putting their money on CBC and Liberty North, and justly so. CBC was the best team in the state that year,
and they won.
But I was like, bro, Lee Summit North, they got some guys. They're gonna win at home against Liberty North. They did lose by 3 points, but then they lost to CBC by 7, and Liberty North lost by like 21. I think in the state championship game.
We were doing Miege Andover Central that day, and I just remember being like, oh, this could be a really good game. We look at the halftime score, and we're like, what is happening?
Because Lee Summit North only lost by 7, and Lee Summit North lost Liberty North by 3, so you're like, this is going to be workout. But the reason why I think it would happen was, though, because I think CBC had to come to Lee Summit North, and Liberty North had to go to CBC. So that was the big difference, was that 3-hour bus drive can really mess with you.
And I'm pretty sure the weather was not great on that 3-hour bus drive either. But I could be wrong.
But Lee Summit North last year, they had their tackle who just went to Oklahoma. Shout out to him. I mean, insanely good. But Lee Summit North had a great season last year, and again fell short to CBC. And this year,
it's not even that they fell short to CBC. It's that I remember the ending of that. I watched that game live from home.
Yeah.
And I just remember they had a chance to win it, and that was one of the better games that I think I've ever watched on the high school level. And that is the game this year that you're probably going to see for the title. I think Lee Summit North has the defense that Liberty North kind of had last year, where they've all grown into it. I mean, Williams Nawari is a wrecking ball.
Me and Joe got to see him at the Under Armour All-American.
First of all, that Under Armour All-American camp had a lot of good kids.
Oh yeah,
a lot of good kids. The kid, Derby,
Dylan Edwards.
Edwards. PJ. Even though he popped off, he goes to Oklahoma now. There's some people that we know and some people that were a little bit farther out. DeSoto even had the guy that went to Mizzou from East St. Louis in Illinois. London Burden the third or what?
No, London. You're thinking. I know who you're talking about.
Oh, what's his
name? He Luther Burden.
Yes.
Good job.
Good looks. But there were a lot of good coaches and players at that camp.
And Palmer really put it all together really nice to make it happen in Kansas City too.
Good job.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go to that, but like just the way that I felt like it all unraveled, it put a lot of our best on display in Kansas City.
Yeah, and Lee Summit North, this is one thing for the last few years. They couldn't. Lee Summit North had to go to CBC to get to the state championship game. So you were just like, Liberty North pretty much was gonna be there the last 2 years. They've kind of switched it up now, like with Smithville.
The state championship game last year was Lee Summit North CBC.
Yeah, but they finally switched that up. Like there was what was it, like Smithville versus HDC? Wait, what's that school? MICDS. Yes. And it was like whoever won that was going to win 42-0 in the state championship. And it happened for 4 straight years. Whereas MICDS, Smithville. And now they finally switched it, I think, where they're on opposite sides. Not at
4A. Yeah, because 5A is St. Mary's.
So good.
St. Mary's is
so
insane, dude.
So
and another thing, like as we get into that, is like the guys that Lee Summit North not only brings back on defense but on offense.
Yeah.
Tanner Howes was a guy who we had on our board going into Game of the Week last year, and it was a rain game, and it was not the greatest conditions for throwing the ball, and Elijah Leonard was hurt. And I just remember Tanner Howes just kind of put the effort on it. He won Lee Summit North that game, not single-handedly, but he's the reason that they won that game. Besides
Like his addition. Yeah,
his addition,
I get you.
Was the reason they won that game. Besides Williams Nawari, who had the craziest sack I've ever. He clotheslined Connor White. He like night train laned somebody. I was like, this is insane. And also, the more you break it down, what are the odds that Lee Summit North, for 3 consecutive years, loses? They lose, 2 games all year long, and last year, and it's Lee Summit or it's Liberty North, and it's CBC, and that's it. And I think if I had to pick right now, and they're gonna put this on a clip if this happens the other way, but
Yeah, I mean,
but I think they beat Liberty North this year in week 1. I think that's a really good game. It's a really attractive game still.
well, yeah, but we also we were like, hey, CDOT, go to Lee Summit North, Liberty North, go do it.
That game kind of,
and it wasn't.
It's not even that the game flopped. It's that both teams were defensively so good.
Dude.
Yeah, and also it was like I'm pretty sure it was the home opener, and it's like you just.
It was the first game of the year.
It was like you didn't really have a game before this, so like
Right.
you're gonna be playing better in any sport later in the
Lee
year.
Summit
than
North
this.
had 2 quarterbacks last year, Max Ford and Elijah Leonard, and Elijah Leonard's kind of got the keys to the city now, which I'm happy for. And then Isaiah Mosey, which is the coach's son.
Yeah.
He is a dog. I think he'll end up at Alabama. If he hasn't already committed, he'll probably end up at Alabama.
Yeah.
Alabama, or I don't know if he has an Ohio State offer, but if he gets an Ohio State offer, that's probably attractive to him. That's why I think Ohio State's wide receiver U at this point.
Well, no,
they are.
yeah.
The wide receiver coach that they have down there is like a
I
national.
mean, if
story.
Oklahoma's old coach, now USC's coach,
I almost
Lincoln
said,
Riley
I almost said
stays-
Matt Vasgersian.
yeah, if Lincoln Riley stays at USC,
Steve
they could
Sarkisian is
start producing a lot of guys because Addison that just went to the Vikings. I mean, USC could start becoming that. I mean, especially with Caleb Williams there, like.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of opportunities especially for guys like Isaiah Mosey. He's got a great build at wide receiver. You know how good you have to be to make a really good wide receiver become a full-time defensive back, and Michael Lane.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about that, dude.
You know how good.
And
of
it's
a number one
crazy
wideout you have to
after
be?
playing with him for 2 seasons, just because like I looked at him from the sideline a lot, being a kicker. But I mean, his freshman year and sophomore year, I really genuinely thought that him and Jay, like he would break Jason's records. Jason Essex, if you guys don't know, I'm talking about Iowa State receiver. But I mean, it's just he has the speed and the ball tracking skills to where he can be great at both.
I just remember it would have been his freshman year, watching a game of yours and being of his, I guess too, and being like, I was like, I don't know. I mean, he's a freshman. It's hard to prove yourself as a freshman.
Yeah.
And he makes a catch on the sideline, and so I'm like, never mind. Yeah, he's gonna be pretty good.
No, it's just like
he's gonna be all right.
That's the eye
naturally.
test.
Yeah.
He was
I was
like
like,
a natural born receiver when I first saw him. That's what I thought. And now after watching some of his clips from the summer practices playing DB, dude, he's the perfect
By the way,
build.
yeah. Speaking of, I mean, their family is perfectly built. His dad played at Pitt.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. If you look up Michael Lane backboard. Or seriously, look it up.
yeah.
He shatters a backboard. I'm pretty sure in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. But speaking of crazy athleticism, another quick segue, and this is a hill that I've talked about in some volleyball communities over the summer. Is Logan Parks the best player in the nation?
Well, there's a few names here that you have to give full credit to.
First of all,
Reese-
before you get
for
into
sure.
that,
Go for sure.
Yeah, can we just talk about how we have been so lucky as to sit in like the nation's hotbed besides Texas for volleyball talent?
No, I don't know. I didn't. Okay, when we made this
This.
company, I did not realize volleyball was like.
Me neither.
I knew there were some good
HOA,
players. Like
yeah.
I went to school with Calissa.
Calissa
Like
Minnicky,
I was
yeah.
like, hey, I know there's some good players. I did not realize that there are so many good players in Kansas State. Like there's not just like female volleyball high school. Like it's like there's clubs for youth,
Dude,
for
KC
men,
Premier.
there are so
Dynasty,
many.
yeah,
Dynasty. Yes.
Dynasty's probably. I don't think because the Dynasty had a really weird season in the lead up to the national tournament, which is right now. where they couldn't win a bid tournament. Obviously they got a bid because they're like
Yes.
the top 5 team in the country, but they lost to like the same team 3 times, which I don't think anybody really expected them to do. It also didn't help that a couple of their players were gone for a couple weeks to play in the U19 Cup, which Kansas City had 2 players play on that team and 2 players be alternates, and 2 of
which
them,
is insane.
which is crazy, and 2 of them were 2025s. Are not incoming seniors. They had Kalissa, who graduated.
Yeah.
They had Ryan McAleer, who was a 2024 as an alternate. They had Logan Parks, who
we're just now talking about.
who's the really the heart of this segment. And then they had Reese Messer, who I think, if you have to say that there's competition for who the best overall player in KC is, it's between those 2.
And shout out to Reese Messer. She just committed to USC.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
crazy. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to her family, her coaches, all of that.
Yeah,
so.
and let's talk about how, if we look at who the top 5 is, in my
even
opinion,
6, you could probably
top
even throw
6.
it. But the only thing is, if you do 6, then it's like, oh, you could do 7 because there are. I mean, there are so many good kids.
Well,
right?
the 6 that I have in mind as the best players in our region, Missouri and Kansas, Logan Parks,
yes,
Reese Messer, Skylar Pierce,
Mullen,
Ashley Mullen, who I think going into last year was who everybody thought was going to be the best player in Kansas City for a couple of years to come.
Yeah.
Carly Cisneros,
Yes.
who is one of 2 sibling pairs to ever both have a sibling in the All-Star game, the McAleers and the
Cisneros.
Mullins, and the Cisneros, rather. The Mullins just had 2 sisters in the
Well,
volleyball
yeah,
All-Star game.
I mean, Abigail's good. I mean, she's amazing as well. Like they're both
Abigail
Abby and Ashley and Abby, right?
Ashley and Abby. Ashley and Abigail, yeah. And then the 6th being Olivia Hasbrook at Eureka.
Oh yeah, I mean she's a little farther out.
Rockwood Thunder's got a really good program, the volleyball AAU program. But if you look at club programs, it's Dynasty, and 4 of those 6 are at Dynasty, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
And,
Dude, how many people from our All-Star game were from Dynasty?
No, but it's not even
I
just
remember
like
Brian Larson, who's the club director at Dynasty, texted us and was like, if you want to use Dynasty coaches next year, like, let us know. It's 3/4 of them are our kids.
Yeah.
And then the rest are KC Power and Mavs, and then there's a couple outside programs. Like I think Micaiah Clayton was at PVA and things like that. But if you really look at it, it was those 3 programs dominated the All-Star game.
But there's even like some freshmen this year. What is that even? 27.
You
Like,
feel old yet? Didn't you
they're-
graduate?
Yeah.
The 2022s that Taylor like 27.
Yeah, but like Fogel, Phoenix Fogel.
She's 26, yeah.
26. And then there's even like people that are. I mean, there are so
Incoming
many good
freshmen,
kids, and not just in Kansas City though. Like even out
Abroad,
farther
yeah.
east in Kansas, and even in St. Louis, there are
Right.
so many
Well,
good
like,
volleyball players.
Yeah, there's a couple players that I think could be like the Brooklyn Delays of the world, which is, if you guys don't know who that is, Brooklyn Delay played at Washburn Rural. They went 40-2 or 42-2 last year.
But we couldn't rank them because
We
they're
couldn't
not
rank
in
them
our
'cause they're not-
area.
yeah, they weren't in our area
But
yet.
they were so good.
We've had a meeting or two where we were like, should we just
Should we
put 'em
just
in?
should we just call it? Yeah, or it's like the same thing with like.
I think that's what happened.
Maybe-
It was a few years ago. We were like, "Hey, Lawrence Free State's really good. Like they're not that far." Okay.
Yeah,
And then we were
okay,
like,
yeah.
Plattsburgh isn't that far either. We could go call a baseball game, and then we did. And so we were like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, Plattsburgh's part of our area." So it's like,
No, and it's like I saw like Gateway has a map of what they consider to be their area, and like people were like, "Where does your coverage cut off?" And I go, "I don't know."
I was like, but for most part, people were like, "Where do you guys cover?" I was like, "Take downtown KC, like take the Sprint Center, and just draw like a 45-mile circle, and that's
Yeah, pretty
roughly
much.
where
That's
we're
what I
at."
But
used
it
to
was
tell
not a straight circle. It would be more
It was
like
it was
like a
obelisk circle that went and it was really weird. It's describing. Welcome to geometry with Metro Sports Mocan.
I gotta do it.
There's no good music
that's-
though, but
yeah, right. No, and like I've talked to a couple people that I'm pretty close with in the volleyball community, and it's like Logan Parks is probably the best player in Kansas City, and I think that really makes her one of the best players in the nation, and it's really because of how versatile she is. I remember watching, we did Game of the Week, Olathe Northwest versus Blue Valley North last week. Olathe Northwest was the preseason #1, which was one of my rankings hot takes didn't necessarily pan out the way that
I mean, they were still such a good team, but I think the
two
reason
of the top 4 best players
no,
in Kansas.
yeah, they were
Huckabee
amazing. I
and
think the thing
Pierce.
that really hurt you doing that though, like what hurt us doing that, was the fact that their schedule was not easy.
Oh yeah.
Like, they had like 10 top 25 teams in a row to start.
No,
the
I was
season.
like, they play 18 top 25 teams this year. This is going to be an interesting
They
season.
had
Like,
a gauntlet of a schedule.
All of the top 5 teams did. I'm pretty sure.
well, it's because there's so
I'm pretty
many
sure
good teams.
Aquinas, St. James, Liberty, and Liberty North had a collective like 8 or 9 losses, and they were all to each other. Like they just kept beating each other.
Well, and it doesn't help, like especially like the Sunflower League, EKL, like they have to play each other.
The conferences
like there
are
was,
crazy.
there was for the last 2 years, I think they just switched it. They switched it last year, yeah, because my junior and senior year, it was like especially my senior year, Northtown, Liberty, and Staley could all have gotten. I mean, they probably could have gotten first, second, and third if it wasn't for CBC and basketball.
Right.
But it's like they have to go through the same district. So
Yeah.
the only team that got there was.
It's not on our call sheet because it happened yesterday, but Kansas released a lot of new rules updates.
Oh,
that
is, yeah.
And that's a big thing, that they're doing a lot of what makes the coaches happy. I talked to Tyler Winland, who was going to be a guest today, but he'll be a guest next week. And he said that it was a much-needed change.
Yeah.
And that he was happy. And that's something that, no offense to Keisha, but we have not heard a lot recently.
Yes.
And obviously these are things that are like kind of coach-oriented, but the fact that Keisha was able to step up and make that change, bravo to them, because it's logistically a little bit more difficult for them now. But it's good for the coaches. It's good for the players. I think it builds a better community. If you don't know what we're talking about, Kansas football state championships will now be at 3 sites. 6-5 and 4A will be at one. 3-2 and 1A will be at another. 8-man and 6-man will be at a separate one, and they'll play Friday and Saturday. 1 game Friday, 2 games Saturday. And it helps a lot for one. I think it helps journalists a lot. First of all, that now, even though it's 2 days, it's I don't have to look at my phone and get on a website to look at what the score is at the 5A game while I'm at the 6A game, and it makes coverage a lot easier.
Yes.
There will be more coverage for the kids.
Yes.
And there will also be a lot more fans in the stands if you're playing these games sequentially like that, and you're able to kind of plan for it better. Because it always kind of made me feel weird, like watching like 2 KC area Kansas teams play at Hummer for the state championship. You're like, dude, these schools are like 15 minutes from each other.
That was
and now they're playing in Topeka for some reason because this is where the tournament is.
Yeah, that was really weird when I was.
And I can't say that that's going to be different.
No,
but
and that was one thing that was weird. Like last year, I was at Wichita State University, and I'm at Coke Arena, and it's like, okay, Blue Valley North is playing Olathe North right now.
And this is what
3 hours away from home.
I think this is the biggest change that it rewards higher seeds. The seeding is the same. It's still. You get out of sub-state, and I know what you're going to say and say it.
So Kansas and Missouri are completely different.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't know, if you're like, I only watch Kansas, or you're like, I only watch Missouri, or you dabble in a little bit of both, you don't know full about all of it. Kansas is like, okay, who has the best record year 1, who has the second best record year 2, who has all the way down to 16. And it can be skewed because Wichita Heights, it's like, okay, you played Salina and you played Wichita East, and then there's teams in the EKL where it's like, you played the 7 best schools. So that's why all the time you'll see Olathe North is like an 8 seed, but they made it all the way to state.
Like Shawnee Mission East in baseball this year was the lowest rated seed because they were under 500, and then they went to the state semifinal.
But that's because are they 5A?
No, Shawnee Mission. All of the Shawnee Mission schools are in 6A.
Which one is the one that is 5A?
Blue Valley Southwest.
That's it. There's one Blue Valley Southwest will be like 13 and 14. And basketball, and then they'll be like the 14th seed, and they'll just boom win out.
Miege, I'm pretty sure Miege volleyball last year they won 4A. I know they won 4A. They might have been 1 game above 500 after the tournament.
Yeah.
So they come into the playoffs and they're like, oh, Miege is 20 and 29, and then you're like, they still have a pretty good shot because they 15 of those 29 losses are
because they're playing EKL 6A schools.
Aquinas, St. James Academy, Blue Valley, Shawnee Mission Northwest, all of the really good EKL and Sunflower League schools.
Yeah, and then Missouri is not the same.
Yeah, Missouri, it's all based off area.
Yeah, so then you go, okay, Missouri is, we're gonna have these districts, and it's like Staley, I don't know. There's a bunch. There's like
class-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's like a St. Louis area, and then there's like a Springfield area, and then there's like a Northwest area. There's a Columbia.
Hey, Brennan.
There's 2 Kansas Cities.
Hey, Brennan, in post, put the
he'll
put the
put
picture
it up for
here.
you.
Yeah.
But they're all set up this way, and so it can be very bad for some teams because then you'll have like Northtown, Staley, Oak Park, Liberty North, Lee Summit
In the
North.
same district.
All of these schools have to play each other, and then
the
you'll
same
be like,
district.
okay, well then maybe it's better for like some teams, and then you have Nixa, Joplin, like all of the Republic, all of these schools have to play each other as well.
Yeah, like Staley Kickapoo State basketball last year was a good championship game. The best championship game would have been Staley Oak Park, who were 1 and 2 for the entire year.
dude.
But
And
they
then
had to play
each other in the district tournament. and
which
I'm-
was a phenomenal game. By
yeah,
the way.
that had 2,000 people at it, and
They sold there was like 500 people that were. They were like,
Yeah,
we can't let you
standing
in.
room,
I remember
really,
you guys
yeah.
trying to save me a spot.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
was
Even in the
late.
regular season game,
Yeah, I was
not even the
late,
playoff
and I
game.
tried to
yeah.
get in. I'm like, yeah, I'm covering it. My
And-
2 friends are right there. They're trying to save me a spot, and they're like, sorry.
So you couldn't do it. But last year, Staley was top 35 at one point. They
good
were
nation,
like,
yeah.
everyone's like, they're going to win state. Because, I mean, they did. And they also had really good players. And Oak Park, Winston, Caleb, Corb, like they had a very stacked team. They played an amazing game, and they still lost by like 6, I think. But it still would have been an
amazing
amazing state game to watch.
20-something and 2.
The only
and
two
their
losses,
two losses
all year
were
were
Staley.
Staley.
Yeah, were Staley.
Yeah, Oak Park was so good last year, and oh my gosh, if Winston came back, watching Winston, Corbin, Caleb now has what he used to. Like, Caleb his freshman
Caleb's
year was
back.
probably the best freshman. Maybe Avion Webb was an
Third
argument,
best freshman,
Corbin.
second
But
or
he
third
was
best freshman. Yeah.
amazing, and then he kind of fell off a little bit, and then he's back now, and he's
Well,
lights out.
from what I know, and I know his sister pretty well, is that he tried to change his shot because, like, if we're being honest, his freshman year he had a pretty funky looking jump shot.
But so did Larry Bird. And
Bill
Larry Bird was
Cartwright,
one of the best.
Cartwright-esque jump shot, and it went in. So like, I don't think any of us really batted an eye to it.
No arc in it.
No arc. He shot like Chandler Parsons on Chandler Parsons light is what I used to call him. He used to shoot it at the rim and it would go in. And he's added a lot to his game. He's so much more athletic now.
He's older
and
too.
a lot of credit. Yeah, he made that sophomore to junior year jump where you see them putting on weight too. And then you look at guys like or Sharon Collins, the coach.
Yeah.
What he has done early in that program, you don't often see. There are a couple times, I think, in a couple years of doing this job now that I've seen teams make jumps in summer. You know, you see kind of what the team's going to be made up of, but you don't see teams that look like they're going to win in March in the summer unless they looked like they were going to win in March the last season. Oak Park is one of those where they add Zeke Brown, they add a coaching staff.
Who, if you don't know who Zeke Brown is, he went to Lawrence Free State, really good shooter.
They got really most of Free State's staff, and then Adam Tanner's dad on the staff, and they kept Anthony Tyler as well. And it's a lot of guys that the kids already knew, and they want these kids to be confident. And that was the important thing. I sat right behind their bench at the 8-10 summer league thing, and I just remember being like, "This team's going to be really good." And it's because they're so confident, and on the offensive end, they just do what they have to do. And you see a lot of times they were running plays
They also-
to get Corbin and Caleb open.
I have a question.
makes him confident.
Is Brown, is he a senior? Or is he a junior?
He's a sophomore.
He's a sophomore. Yeah, their team,
Maybe. He might
I
be a
don't
junior.
think they have a single senior starting. I don't even know if
They
they
have
have
Donovan Ross starting.
He is starting? I thought he was sixth man.
They brought Zeke Brown off the bench. They brought
Okay,
Zeke
so
off the
Brown's
bench.
on the bench. Okay, but they have Corbin, Caleb, both juniors, Xavier
Mm-hmm.
Jr., Adam and Zeke, Adam and Zeke both sophomores.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 guys that they're going to bring back next year who are all 5 capable of starting.
Well, not only that, but I think the big caveat for them is, they're not that big.
Corbin's going to be
Corbin is a massive human being.
he's insanely athletic. So
and
even
he's
if
really
he wasn't
strong
big,
as well.
he's
You look
super-
at like last year, the big thing in the first Staley game is that they couldn't seem to get past Staley's like bottom.
Cameron and Caden, yeah.
Cameron and Caden, and then in the playoff game, it looks like they had developed strength wise enough to where they could put up a match with them. But it also helps that Staley shot against Kickapoo in that Bass Pro tournament.
Yes.
Over the winter over break, they shot 71% from the field.
Yeah, I remember you sending me
And
that
Kickapoo
stat.
shot like 29.8%. And that's why when they played him in the state championship game, at first I was like, this is not going to go well. And Staley beat Battle by 30 in the
Yeah.
first round of the state playoffs. And it's like, Kansas does a lot of things well. They do some things wrong. Misha does equally many things well, I would say, and probably just about as many things wrong as well.
Yeah.
They both need a shot clock.
Another change
They both need a shot clock.
Another change that we were talking about. So he's talking about Tyler Winland earlier, and how he was saying that was going to be a good change for Kansas the way they're switching up state. We also know a few refs, a few on the Kisser side, but mainly on the Misha side.
A lot on the Misha side. Yeah.
Raj Wendell, who's a ref, he does football and basketball. He was talking to us about it. This is pretty public, so if you follow this stuff, you probably already know this. But like, there's no bonus anymore. There's not like a single.
Well, that was in FHS.
That was in FHS. Yeah. But that's pretty universal now. Yeah. But there's a lot of rule changes that are to help the game flow a little bit faster, the kids to a lot of stuff that is a really good change as well. That's not really just Misha or Kisha in FHS, but it's a good change that nonetheless.
Most people support. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the only thing now is like just get a shot clock.
And from the perspective, we are big school kids. We went to a 5A school and 2 6A schools when it comes to basketball, and you look at it and you think, oh, well, for us it makes sense because we have, Northtown has a really nice gym.
They have the budget too.
Tonka has a really nice gym. The reason that we don't have one yet is because of the small schools that voted down. And from a perspective of somebody, obviously our small class director, Tyler, is in the booth. There's some schools that you look at that just don't really have the funds to do that right now. And it's obviously there's not much they can do about it. It's not like, there's some guy who's volunteering to buy shot clocks for all 800 member schools in Missouri and Kansas.
And then you have to have someone to run it. I mean, they probably just use the same person who's using the game clock anyways. But like
it's difficult. Yeah, like it's not easy.
Yeah. So I get why it's slow to happen. But it will at some point get there.
Eventually happen. It's an innovation that's coming.
Yeah. I also want to say a few things real quick just to the audience. If we understand that we know a lot about this stuff that you might not. Some coaches, they're like, yep, I got that. Okay, that's Caden, that's Cayenne. That they get the names. Some people might not quite get the names, but if you just kind of understand the schools and like the stuff that we're getting at, you'll still get the same coverage out of it. So
yeah. Well, and there's also probably equally as many people that are like, oh, they left that out.
Or they left that kid's name. They left that, yeah. I get you.
And last thing I'm going to say on the Logan Parks thing before we fully transition to football. I am so sorry because I mispronounced her name for the entirety of the game of the week. Because I know...
What did you say?
I kept either not saying Parks, I would say Park, or I kept calling her Tyler, because I have a friend named Tyler Parks.
Oh, yeah.
And it bothered me for the entire... I went back and listened to that broadcast and felt like a terrible
It was such
person.
a good game, though.
Such a good game.
Oh, dude, I was watching it from home.
It was such a good game, and she played so well, and it gave her... Like, it made me feel like I didn't know what I was doing. So I sincerely apologize because that was probably one of the best performances I've ever seen. Her and Janelle, like, one of them would set and one of them would play outside, and then one of them would play outside and one of them would set. And it's like, these two are just a Swiss Army knife. They are two-manning the two best, or really the second best team in Kansas.
Yeah, and I remember being in Wichita, and I was in the dining hall, and I was with like a group of friends watching it, and they were like, "Are you a nerd watching high school girls volleyball?" And I was like, "This is the game of the week."
The Metro Sports game of the week, dude.
Honey, come on, Metro Sports game of the week.
Mom, get the camera. And then as we fully get into football, speaking of Wichita, we'll talk about some teams that I think are going to stand out in Kansas this year. Or we think that are going to stand out in Kansas this year. First, Wichita Northwest. They were 8-3 last year. They bring back quarterback Jace Glasper, who threw for 18 touchdowns, had over 1,600 yards, which for a team that ran the ball as much as they did, it's a pretty good stat line.
Oh, yeah, and so like I was in Wichita last year, so I went to one Derby game, I went to one Andover game, I went to one Mays game, and then I went to one Andover Central game, which 3 of those aren't Wichita, but they're Wichita if you
Wichita
from
area.
Yeah, and Wichita Northwest, I did not go to a game, but I watched them because they were probably out of the Wichita East, South, Heights, all of them. They're the best of the Wichita schools for sure. Derby just lost Dylan Edwards, so I actually don't think they're going to be quite. I mean, they'll still probably be okay.
Yeah,
especially since I think they're 5A, right? Are they still 6? No, they're 6 because they played Manhattan.
They're 6. They played. Yeah, they're 6.
But Andover Central's 4 and Andover's 5, so those two will both still be good.
And the thing about Derby is we give Dylan Edwards a lot of credit because he did carry most of the heavy load on that team.
He had a lot of touchdowns.
They also had another very good running back.
Yeah.
Who they also lost as a senior as well. And then back to Wichita Northwest, they bring back Sincere Thompson, who ran for 17 touchdowns, had almost 1,300 yards. He's one of the best returning running backs in Kansas. They have a very, very young defense. Like, you remember looking at Lee Summit North 2 years ago and saying, this team's really young, and they're going to do a lot of really good things here in 2 to 3 years. That's where Wichita Northwest is now.
Yeah.
I think this is their year where they could really, really compete. I think next year is kind of a toss-up because they lose a lot of
offensive
offense.
power, but they'll keep the defense. Yeah.
The thing about Wichita Northwest, they've still been decently good these past few years in football with the younger squad.
If you look at, if there's a team that has 4 sophomores starting on defense and they're giving up 17 points a game,
I'd be so
probably gonna be
scared
pretty
in a year.
So
or two.
one of my teammates at Lincoln and one of my good friends that I hung out with a lot, Shimon, he went to Wichita Northwest, was a receiver there. And I just remember we watched the game together, a Wichita Northwest game when they played. I forgot who it was. It was one of the Wichita West.
It's probably
schools.
maybe like South or East or
Yeah,
something.
it was. I'm pretty sure it was South, but we watched that game and dude, their defense was just so suffocating. It was really crazy to watch.
And not only like,
And this is before I knew they were all 16-year-olds.
yeah, and like they were very young, but that doesn't mean that they weren't really fast and really
Right.
athletic. Like they were.
and there's a big thing where it's like, yeah, they're young. They don't really have anything to lose either, you know? That these kids are going to compete. And it used to be that, you know, you put a lot of sophomores on the field, you're going to lose some games.
Yeah.
And obviously there is some rookie mistakes that you'll see with freshmen and sophomores, even if we go back to
No matter what sport.
Yeah, no matter what sport. But if you can win with those guys, imagine what you're going to be able to do when they're juniors and seniors.
Oh yeah.
Really, between your sophomore and junior year of high school, and we all can probably attest to this, you turn into a grown man in that summer. You go from being that kid with a bunch of acne on his face to I'm pretty much a grown dude now.
No, yeah. Like, I mean, I know this is different because, like, I'm still not, like, a huge guy or anything like that. But, like, I remember, like, starting swim my sophomore year, I was pretty bad. My junior year, I was like, I got a little bit better. And then the gap between my junior and senior year, I dropped, like, I mean, I went from, like, okay, I'm okay. I got, like, 4th at districts to, like, okay, I'm going to contend at state. Like,
Right.
I dropped, like, 15 seconds, which is insane for
yeah,
running
a lot of
sports,
time.
swim sports,
Yeah.
stuff like that. That's a lot of time, and so it was. I mean, there's a big jump, especially with these other kids like Avion Webb, who is a sophomore. It's like when he's a senior, Caleb, when Corbin, when these kids are seniors, it's like it is going to like you're shocked now because they're young, but when they're a senior, it's going to be a completely different game that you're watching.
Well, and then to move on, you look at an older team now at the 6A level in Gardner Edgerton.
Yeah.
They bring back Dawson Kindler, who had 27 rushing touchdowns last year. Do you know how many if a guy has 27 passing touchdowns, that's up there for one of the best in Kansas City.
For the NFL, 27 passing touchdowns is still like I think
A Pro
top
Bowl level.
16.
Yeah, Pro Bowl
like that's
level.
still and that is like half the games in high school.
Yeah. No, well, they did play 14, maybe 15, games, incling the state playoffs, and that's
Well, that
playoff
because
numbers
they
included.
had like 2
9
district playoff games
or
and like
8
3
regular
state,
season
and then
games.
yeah.
And then you look at they're pretty young defensively, and they showed a lot of promise, and they're going to be a team that's ready to play. They're coming off a loss to Manhattan in the state title game. That leaves a taste in your
That
mouth.
game was
So good,
Dude.
Did he get in?
no like when it
Did he
okay.
get
First
in?
of all, I'm not. I was talking to some people that were like, "Why do you go for 2 there?" And like, yeah, I guess, but like, it's a state championship game. You're trying to win,
Oh, yeah.
so I kind of like that. Like,
When I saw it
ballsiest
happening-
call, and I love it.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
When I saw them walk out there and go for 2, I was like,
And Manhattan was, I mean, they were a great team. They beat Derby
Truman
twice.
was,
Like, they were a great team. But
no, but I just seen them go out there for 2, and I'm just looking around for the people watching me, and I'm like, did you guys rewind it?
like, did you?
Where is their kicker?
Yeah,
where's their kicker?
Well, because like, I mean,
I don't think their kicker had missed that game either. It wasn't they just had no faith.
I think
that he could hit a PAT.
I think he missed a field goal earlier in the game, like the first quarter. But like, he hit 2 extra points in it, and 3
Yeah, it's
extra
like
points
the
already
lack
that
of
game.
confidence wasn't there.
Yeah, it wasn't like
it wasn't that they were like, oh, we don't trust our kicker here. It was all right. Either we're gonna win or we're gonna lose.
Yeah.
and they almost won too.
Oh my, it was so close. It was a great game.
And shout out to Manhattan for winning. I think that was like the
Oh.
first championship in years.
And Manhattan will not be the team that they were last year. This year
They lost so many kids.
They lost so many kids. They're on that Derby plane where it's like they're gonna be good, because they're Manhattan, but they're not going to be, what they were. Their baseball team as a perennial contender. I remember every year, I've done Kansas State baseball 3 years, and they have won. They've went every year.
Well, they always have really good pitching, and they never lack on the bat side. So you have both of those, and
when Carson Liggett's pumping 96 down your throat, you're
gonna win games.
No, you're gonna. He played for Blue Valley.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I mean, that's who they ran.
No, Blue Valley won.
They've just run into some buzzsaws.
Yeah.
in the
there's
state playoffs.
some really good players and really good teams.
Right.
Yeah, and then next Mill Valley is a really good team.
Yeah.
We just went to the padded camp in Rockhurst yesterday morning.
Yesterday morning.
And they were there, and they can throw the ball.
And well, not only that, they have Tristan Baker, who we talked about looking like a grown man going into your senior year. He looks like a grown man.
We're in the booth, like
yards, many yards away.
And you're like, he's the biggest. He's the best.
He looked like a D end.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he actually flipped and played a little bit of D end. That or they just have a bunch of guys who look alike.
Yeah, but there was also Bishop Mies was there too, a few other schools, and there was a lot of good players. But you're like, this guy is gonna.
They are probably the best defensive juggernaut that I've seen.
Yeah,
and I think they are in the top 3 in terms of
this is Mill Valley
team juggernauts.
Mill Valley,
yeah. In all of Missouri and Kansas, I think it's really in terms of team juggernauts for the last however many years. It is Mill Valley, CBC, and Cardinal Ritter, and those are the 3. Yeah. And then maybe Lee Summit North or Liberty. It's Liberty North in Kansas City. Yeah. Liberty North has successfully built
for years
an insane athletic program. They've only been a school since 2012.
Yeah, not
so.
I mean, that's 11 but
years.
That's not that long. Lee Summit North also I think was made in 2014, or that West. I think Lee Summit West was made in 2014. Lee Summit
West is the newest one.
Yeah, 2014. But even Lee Summit West got second in swim a few years ago. Like there's a lot of very talented kids all around the area.
Oh, and here's my only caveat, and this really isn't a true caveat. The only thing that I don't like about the Missouri playoff system so far, there's a championship multiplier, is not a big one, that there is competition at 6A. There's a little bit of competition at 5A. There's pretty good competition at 4A. Ritter's going to win 3A. They're going to win 3A. And it would be so awesome if we could get Cardinal Ritter, Rockwood Summit, Webb City, like some of the KC schools like Smithville and Platte County, and then
Smithville. Talk about a school that's been really good the last
Don't even
years.
talk about Smithville to me.
Tonka grad
D1
Smithville.
hater.
D1 Smithville hater.
No, but
we're
going
not
back to
a
Mill Valley.
D1 Smithville hater, by the way.
Mill Valley 3-time state championship. I mean, no, we called the Smithville Lincoln game. Like they are super good.
Yeah,
super good, and pretty good friends with like Riker Edwards basketball, baseball. Like there's some guys that we know pretty well.
You look at Andrew Hedgecourt, and you do not think that he can throw the ball that far.
I remember watching him warm up and being like, is this going to work for them?
Yeah.
And it did. It did very well.
The one thing that it will be not scary because I think they'll still be fine, but because Mill Valley, we saw them the other day, they can still throw. They'll have a new quarterback for the first time in 2 years.
Yeah, Hayden J, man.
He was a dog, but also when your running back runs for 1,300 yards and 20 touchdowns, and he's coming back.
He had more touchdowns than Landon had PATs that 1 year. So.
Yeah, according to Misha.
We had 19 touchdowns?
We had 19 touchdowns. And they're still going to be a defensive juggernaut. I remember they opened the year, and they won like 105-3 in their first 3 games.
Their front 6 could easily all.
They looked like there are very few teams that I think stack up in the front 6 to what Northtown had my junior year of high school. They're as big as Northtown was.
Well, when 3 of the 6 go to really high level D1, Alabama, Oklahoma, all SEC. Yeah. Oh no, I guess Iowa State's Big 12, but still, like they're 3 huge.
I will never live that down. And then I just mentioned Rockwood Summit on the 5A level. We have our rankings done, our preseason rankings. You will not see them for a little while.
Just to tweak them if we need to.
Just to tweak them if we need to. We're going to try to get to see most of the teams play.
Talk to coaches.
Talk to coaches. Look at some film as well. But they genuinely, I think there are 4 competitors for being the number 1 team. 4 teams that I could see right now that could be the number 1 team. Lee Summit North, CBC, Mill Valley, and Rockwood Summit.
I agree.
And Rockwood Summit 11-2 last year. Their only losses were in the playoffs to St. Mary's 48-3, which
Yeah,
is
3 is bad.
which is crazy.
Yeah, but St. Mary's is also
St.
very
Mary's
good.
very, very good. And then Marquette 14-2, which it seemed like sometimes their offense just couldn't get working, but their defense was still very good.
Yeah, that's the 2 points. Was
But
the
when
defense.
you're 11-2 and the next year you're looking at being pretty good and playing the same schedule.
Yeah, especially when you bring back your starting quarterback.
Yeah, starting court. I mean, 33 touchdowns, throwing touchdowns.
Only 5 picks,
Only 5 picks too,
which is more than 6 touchdowns per pick.
yeah, good math.
Yeah, good math. Great math.
math.
They bring back their leading rusher in Elijah Stevens, 16 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards rushing. They do lose their leading receiver, who had 529, Javion Tiller, but they bring back their next 3 leading receivers, and their leading tacklers are back. They lose their leading tackler, Dominic Nininger, which was a fun name to spell on the call sheet earlier, by the way. But they bring back Ben Tripp and Kirk, who both had 94 and 89 tackles respectively. So you're losing a little bit on defense, but you're not losing.
Crazy. But it's. I mean, that's with any sport though. Like even if it's
Right.
professional, where your contracts go up, or if it's college because you will go to the draft, or because it's high school because you will graduate, you're gonna lose a few players. But these guys, I mean, they're so, blessed and lucky to have these fillers who are just. I mean, they proved it last year.
Right.
Now they're a year older,
guys
a
step
year
up, yeah.
bigger, a year smarter, everything.
That's what impresses me kind of about some of the Blue Valley programs and some of the programs in the Eastern Kansas League and even some of the Wichita schools is that they're not good. They're not relevant for 1 year. They just constantly, it's like they have a developmental stream that comes into this program. Like you look at like the Ed Fritz Blue Valley Northwest era where it's they graduated 4 seniors this year. Never mind. Never mind. They've got a kid who's been playing AAU with his program since he was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're saying that he's out here recruiting these kids because they all lived in Blue Valley.
Yeah.
Like you look at Clayton Custer and Ben Richardson, who played at Loyola Chicago and came through the Fritz programs when they were 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
There's pictures of them playing in BV&W elite shirts when they're like this tall. And they played that entire time. So by the time that they're in high school, they've been coached by the same guy for 13 years.
That's why schools like Smithfield, Platte County, like these small.
Dude, those Smithfield, like I know. Yeah. Smithfield is. When I say small, it feels disrespectful because there's so many houses at Donald Lake. They're not small, but like everyone. It's like
a town with one high school.
Like it's like a church or like a community or like something like that where it's like everyone knows everyone.
Yeah, no, dude. I remember playing against Smithfield one year in soccer, and I played club soccer growing up my whole life, and we always played this one team from Smithfield, and.
Like this is the same team.
Yeah, dude, no, literally, my
every single year it's the same 5 guys.
I'm looking at the kids, and I'm like, dude, this is the same exact team minus like 4 players that I got my butt kicked to in AAU soccer. Like,
yeah, because like I remember going up to see one of my friends, Jalen. You remember? I didn't see him for a while. I was like, hey, I'm gonna come up say hi to you in Smithville. The whole football team was doing a fundraiser that day that I went to Jalen with. They all were like best friends. And it's like 60 kids. And they're all pulling corn, 100 bags of corn. I'm like, these guys are all, when they say dad strength, farmer strength, they all have it. And they're all best friends.
And that's what, I've been talking a lot to, J.C. Harmon's football coach. And, that is not lost upon some of these schools that don't have it. Like, it's not like nobody is trying to build these kind of programs. But, I'm talking to him. And his name's Keith O'Neill, really good dude. And he texted me yesterday, and he's like, you got to watch Harmon play before I was here. Did you see anything that was different? And the energy was different. I know
they looked like they wanted to be at that campus.
They looked like they wanted to be there, and they were grateful for it to be able to play with these state championship programs. And it's different. I'm not gonna say anything to. It's not to talk down on the guys who were at Harmon before, but it's just to say that they have a very good blueprint on the Kansas side, especially that says. This is what you can do to build a program that's good for a lot of years, and there are so many people that are looking to repeat that, and it's good. It's good for the sport.
Yeah,
it's really good for the kids.
Inner city schools, are starting to come out of nowhere because, all
it is what it is. They'll be fine with the camera.
All these inner city schools coming out of nowhere. It's just like they're starting to get coaches that make the kids care about the sport. These inner city schools, have been coming out of nowhere. Lincoln Prep. Like now, I guarantee you Harmon's gonna have a lot better of a
Right.
season. Like Ruskin's had a bigger season this year than they have in the past. It's just coaches are coming in and making these kids really actually care about the sport finally. You know?
In the suburban boom, you see like it hurts kind of, and I have no idea why, and I'm not here to comment about why, but like some of the guys who transferred out of the inner city schools, like I get it. You want to go play for a school that has the best facilities and the best this and that. And that's why, we talked about it earlier, that's why I'm not upset when I see these kids transfer. But you look at, like, John Price at Lincoln Prep, very good. Still very good at Blue Valley, where he ended up at. And you see from the outside even why he would transfer there. Because, I mean, to say that Lincoln has the best facilities, or, it's just, I don't think it's accurate.
Yeah.
But one thing that I do enjoy seeing, and I talked to Keith about this, is that at Harmon specifically, and I would think this is how it is with most of these schools. I'm not saying it's not that way with Lincoln, but with most of these schools, you have to have top-down buy-in. You have to have it from the school board.
I mean, honestly, I know that's a thing with these smaller and these inner city schools like that. But if you really want to win a state championship, and even if you just want to get these kids back on the roll and get this team into a 500, that's fine. But at any team, you need this top-down buy-in. You have to be like, hey, like even the Chiefs, Mahomes is him. Andy Reid is him. We are focusing on getting a win. And this it doesn't matter if you're the Jaguar. It doesn't matter if you're Lincoln Prep. It doesn't matter if you're Sporting KC. You have to buy in to whatever you're playing, whatever your coaches say, whatever your quarterback says, whatever.
And you need it from the district office to the athletic staff at the school, coaches,
even the fan
athletic director, the alumni as well. Top down buy-in. Because when all of these people buy in, all of those moving parts, the adults in the equation buy in, it makes it so much easier for the students and the players to buy in.
And that's what was big with me and Fuzz our freshman year, coming in, brand new coach, first year, not many people know exactly a lot about him. The first things he really did, before we even focused on, plays and making sure that we're sharp on the football level, he just made us believe in ourselves. And like you see the type of turnaround that Winnetonka had the 3 seasons that Palmer had.
And it's a good start when the beginning of your turnaround for a football program is get invited to play with the returning 4A champion, the returning 5A champion, a big competitor at the 6A level in Blue Valley.
Yeah.
Like that's a good sign for them. And it's so good to see, like, when Lincoln Prep they are still very, very good.
Oh yeah.
Even before Chip Sherman, when I can't think of his name, he's in California now. When they lost to Smithville the year we called that game.
Yeah.
The fans had bought in. The athletic administration had bought in, and it was like, they can say Lincoln versus the world. That's what it felt like. It felt like when you went to these games, it was like, all right, we know Lincoln's going to bring 750 people to this game.
And Lincoln's fan support is like that in
every sport. And they had the kids totally from a top-down standpoint bought in, and that was really good to see. It did make me sad that he left for a greener coaching pasture. But, to see those inner city schools succeed, and to see really any of the schools succeed.
Around us, or the students, or whatever,
in a turnaround fashion especially, it's a good thing to see that these
Joseph Vick at Central coming out of nowhere, going to Missouri Western now, got himself a scholarship.
Center as well. Center is not the team you think of when you think, oh, they've had this championship pedigree for the last 20 years, or they have Liberty North level, from 2012 to now they've been a perennial contender. But just to have a coach that cares, DeLong is a great guy. His daughter was a very good volleyball player as well. To have that buy-in, and then once a couple people buy in, you can get all the coaches to buy in, usually things are going to follow after that. It's really good.
Suit, yeah. And then another thing you were talking about earlier with, like, retaining wins, retaining players, retaining the spirits, everything like that. Wichita Heights, 2 years ago, I think they lost 1 game all year, 1 state. Come back this year, they lost 2 games all year, and they lost 3 or 4 seniors 2 years ago. They lost 3 or 4 seniors this year, and this next year they're still going to be a 28 and something team. And they might lose 4 games this year, but that's still, when you can go almost 60 wins and 8 losses in 3 years, you are very good.
Right. And speaking of that, like, you look at Cardinal Ritter, they, I think, would be probably the 3 or 4th best team in 6A as a 3A school, we saw yesterday their quarterback, one of their quarterbacks committed. They have two really good quarterbacks. Antoine McKay committed to Western Illinois, 1,600 yards, 16 touchdowns for him. Very, very good. They have a two-headed monster at QB, and they were both juniors last year. They do lose a couple of their receivers, but they bring in a kid from East St. Louis who is
which actually is in Illinois.
Fun fact, East St. Louis, Illinois school. They bring in DJ Miller from East St. Louis, and he was a very good receiver last year.
East St. Louis is also one of, if not the best Illinois schools.
Mm-hmm.
They won state when Luther was there. Mm-hmm. They were very good last year.
They were wide receiver powerhouse.
They were ranked 14th in the entire nation 2 years ago, and they produce a lot of DBs, safeties, wide receivers, quarterback. I mean, they just start skill position players. They just produce them.
They probably have offensive linemen as dogs too.
Oh, D linemen.
Yeah,
I've seen it on TikTok. They had that.
Miles McVay went to Alabama.
Yeah. He was huge, man. Huge.
Have you guys seen the unrelated? Have you guys seen the TikTok where it's like, oh, we're at Pac-12 school, and it's like, oh, you're 205, and you're middle linebacker. Let's go. You're adding weight. He's like, yeah, I'm 209 actually. He's like, let's go. And then Nick Saban walks in the room for Alabama. You're 209. You play wide receiver. I'm a middle linebacker. Add 40 pounds, and it's like the two difference between the two schools. It's like,
dude, I would pay to get into like Alabama's weight room in the morning, and you're like, this is a lot of dudes. This is a lot
and
of guys.
they are moving. They are throwing weights.
Yeah,
they are throwing weights.
Wild.
You see a 185 guy walk up to the bench on squad day, 500.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. You're like, your punter squatting 490?
The other day, I called Brennan, and I'm mid homework assignment on my MacBook, and I'm like, hey, did you see Nick Chubb just squat 700? What was it? 800? Was it 700?
800.
And I'm like, he had no knee straps, he had no spotter, he had no belt, and he did full depth. And I'm like, he is a running back with absolutely no accessories on. He just woke up and was like, I'm gonna squat 700 pounds right now.
Well, let's pull up a picture of Nick Chubb on post. He is not a small person.
No, but like, could you? If he had an Olympic belt on, he had those knee braces.
Well,
800.
I got a clip today of Saquon doing 585 for 10 on my ESPN.
That is insane. Yeah. That is insane. The amount of weight that people can throw.
585 pounds and get tired. Like that's.
I'm like, can I leg press that?
Right. No, and even back to Cardinal Ritter, like we said, they've got guys. They've got an East St. Louis guy coming in. Arguably a better team than they were last year. And last year they went 14-0 and won games by an average of 36 points.
Yeah, that's actual. Crazy. We did the math. That was
36 points. Do you know how insane it is to win a game by 36 points? If a team wins a game by 36 points in football is demoralizing. That's 5 scores.
Yeah, like even like Bama. Like Notre Dame last year. Notre Dame is prolific for having a great football team. You're like, hey, even if they didn't have to play Clemson. And they didn't have to play these right. They're playing Marshall. They still lost to Marshall. Like, could you imagine winning 36 points a game? Like, the only team I think he was even close to potentially doing that is maybe Georgia last year because they beat TCU by 50 in the national championship game.
But it was nuts doing the research for that and like pulling up the numbers. And
I
did it. I did it twice.
I get it. They're a 3A school, but like last year and this year, they could viably. Kansas, everyone makes state, but for like Missouri, like they would still be a state. They would still be a state contender team. Yeah,
that's exciting. And I don't know. Like, part of me is like, should they really get to play? We've made this argument a couple years ago before Rockhurst went to 6A. And we're like, yeah, they got 800 kids at their school. They have 800 dudes.
That's the thing. Right. That is so funny because like Rockhurst, I mean, they've been 6A for a while now. But like before they made the switch, it was like they only have 800 kids or 700 kids. I'm like, yeah, they have 700 grown teenage men. And it's yes, Staley has 1,600 students, but Rockhurst has more guys than they do. So it's not equivalent.
When running against Rockhurst in high school, running track and cross country, you're like, they've got another one of these guys?
Yeah.
They're spawning, like looking at the meet entries before you go to a meet, and you're like, oh, who are we running against? Like, what teams? It's like, oh, Great. It was open. It was open entrance. Rockhurst is going to have 11 guys in this race.
Yeah, so that was the same thing.
And it's mandatory to play sport. You have to play a sport.
You have to, yeah. And I don't know if you, we don't cover swim with Metro, but I'm a connoisseur. Like you, cross country, you know a lot.
I'll look at the time times.
And I'll look, and I remember going to meets when I swam, and even last year, and it's like Rockhurst, they'll go to open meets, and it'll be like, okay, 1 through 14 are all Rockhurst kids. It's like, this is the 100 fly, and they are 1 through 14, and then you have a Kearney kid somewhere in there, and like I remember Bradley. I'm not joking you, at a like KC Invite, stuff like that. In KC Invite, we had stuff like that. They had like the KC Classic. Bradley went to state and broke the school record for fly. He got 8th. The 7 people above him were all rockers. They were all rockers. It was so funny. Yeah. He was like, I just got 8th place to 7 rockers kids.
Oh yeah, rockers.
Can you imagine going to school the next day? You got second, I got first.
Right. No, like Rockhurst at the beginning of the year hosts an early bird meet, which is like a track meet that really doesn't count, but they take times for it.
So you can qualify for state early or whatever.
No,
something like that.
That's not how
you can't.
That's not how.
That's not how that works. But swim is the exact opposite.
No, and there's been guys for years that it's like, especially in cross country, and I think we talked about this on the BK and Joe show forever ago, that you could run 15 flat, which is a really, really good 5K time.
This is that's
really, really
insane. 15 that's less flat, than 5 minutes
15
a mile.
flat 3 years ago in Missouri would have won you the state championship. Now,
who was the kid from Rockbridge that ran like a 14:26?
He won he didn't win, and he won the Nike Midwest like regional race. It's called like NXR.
I talk about that kid all the time because I'll talk to people
Andrew Hauser.
Yeah, and there was a kid at Liberty North that was just as fast as him.
Yeah, so, and then it sucks because only the top 4 from each district qualify for the state meet.
And there's 4 kids at Liberty North that can qualify.
There's 4 kids in the in Class 6 District 8, or I think there's only 4 districts for district for Class 6 in Missouri.
Sure.
And they had 4 kids that ran, or they had 11 kids who ran times that would have placed at the top in the top 25 in the state meet, but they could only send 4. And then it's like there's a kid every year that runs a really, really good time, might have not been his best race, but he runs a bad time and he doesn't go to the state meet, even though he's won 3/4 of the races he's ran in this year. And it really sucks.
That is so dumb. They do this for golf as well, which we don't cover golf, but you could be the best golfer all year.
This is on both sides, by the way.
Yes.
This is on Missouri and Kansas.
Missouri and Kansas. And so there's a bunch of practice, like basically you could go to 0 golf meets all year, and then the one match day, you do good on 18 holes, and you get like 67, which if you don't know is very good.
67's pretty good.
Yeah, but there was a kid, I felt so bad for him because you can only send like 4 to 8 kids, I think, to the state. And there was 2 kids from Pembroke Hill who all year their handicap was like -17, which is like not quite PGA Tour,
US
but like
Open level.
Like that's really good. And so this kid, he went to the district meet and they were going together. He got 70, which by the way is so good. Yeah. Like I shot 100 or something, and he missed it because he got 5th because there was a kid got 69, 2 kids got 67, and 1 kid got 66, and all year he's been the number 1 rated, and because he had an off day, which an off day was still the 5th best, he couldn't go to state.
And it also it's the same logic as when you go to the Olympics, if you have one bad race, you don't qualify for the final. But I think it would be, and then it's also another reason they don't do it, especially for cross country. I don't really understand why they wouldn't do it for track, but for cross country it's different because courses matter.
Yeah,
like you can. I know there's people.
You might have ran it really fast on a really easy
guys
course.
who ran at Gans Creek.
There's no hills or there's no mud or whatever.
The Gans Creek course, which is at Mizzou, is like where all the really, really elite guys run, and it's really you can open qualify for it. Like Breck Brown ran at Gans Creek this year, or the only guy from Northtown that ran at Gans Creek. But then there's full teams that qualify to run at Gans Creek.
Sure.
And if you run at Gans Creek, you have a significant advantage to have a better time than anybody who didn't run at Gans Creek because it's just a faster course. But for track, all of the tracks are the same.
Yeah. The wind might be a little bit different, stuff like that. But yeah, the
NCAA does it, and they all run on different tracks. And the NCAA does it for cross country as well. It's just for track, it's never made a lot of sense to me that a kid can accidentally run 4:18 one day instead of 4:12, and he doesn't qualify for the state meet, even though he's ran, sat 4:05 all year long. Like, you look at imagine Connor Burns, who's arguably the number one runner in the nation right now. He went to Southern Boone. He's the 10th guy ever to run sub-4 in high school. That was a holiday in my household, by the way. I remember watching him.
Have you seen that movie 4 Minute Mile or whatever?
Yeah, no, I remember. No. We had something planned that day, and I'm pretty sure I told you it's got to be after this time because I'm going to watch Connor Burns try to break Alan Webb's high school.
Thank you guys so much for watching the Come Up Top podcast. My name's Joe, Landon, Brennan. This has been a great episode 2. Sorry we couldn't get Cliff Notes as our guest. We'll be back for another episode on Monday. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Please.
Fade to black.